الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So this is inshallah the second segment speaking about Imam Ahmed Ibn Hanbal Al-Shaybani rahimahullah ta'ala. And Imam Ahmed, his kunya was Abu Abdullah. His kunya or his nickname was Abu Abdullah. So we said Imam Ahmed studied under so many scholars, starting in Iraq, then moving to from Baghdad where he is to Al-Basra, moving to Sham, moving to Mecca, moving to Yemen. So he studied with so many different scholars of his time, and he gathered most of the hadith that could be gathered at his time. So he traveled to each imam, he took the hadith with each imam, and then he built his own school of thought or his own approach when it comes to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and the fiqh, how to understand this hadith and implement it. Imam Ahmed Ibn Hanbal had a very special kind of style. So although he committed all the hadith that he had, he committed them to memory, yet he would not narrate hadith or teach hadith except from his books. That was a very high standard. Why? Because he said, I don't want to make a mistake in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. I don't want to teach a mistake. So every time he taught, he made sure he would read it from his own records. And he had such a huge library. Okay. So we said we're going to add some of the things. Imam Ahmed decided to teach only at age 40. And I was actually reflecting on this. I was trying to understand, there are some imams who only taught when they reached the age 40. And why did they do this? I think
don't ask me, I don't know.
I was going to ask about the audio. I can hear some feedback or some.
Yeah, but it's common among the Jews. Basically, they established this theory way back. Maturity starts from 40.
From 40.
So they reflected that on their Ummah, Muslimin, when they are dealing with them, especially with Israeliyat and all those ones. That's
Okay.
The adaptation.
Okay, so it comes from people of the scripture,
Right.
let's say. So, okay, that's a view. That's a view. But this could, like Imam Ahmed was actually hoping, so I hope Muhammad will deal with the. Yeah, Muhammad, the audio, I think there is, it's a bit high, so if you can put it a bit down. So Imam Ahmed, he basically, the way he took it is from the life of the Prophet ﷺ, so that he was given prophethood and he was given the message when he was 40. So it seems that Imam Ahmed also thought this was the age of real maturity. And even in the Quran, حتى إذا بلغ أشده وبلغ 40 سنة قال ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers in the Quran to the age 40 that it is the age of maturity. The age of maturity. And the Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith, من بلغ 40 فقد أعذر. Whoever reaches age 40, he's been given enough time to come back to Allah. That's it. So he shouldn't have any question or any excuse with Allah later on. I only lived 40. Once you reach 40, that's enough time for you to reflect about life and realize the truth and embrace it. So Imam Ahmed started teaching only at age 40. So I was trying to figure out exactly why Imam Ahmed did that. And subhanAllah, this is a dilemma that people who teach Islamic studies and Islamic sciences, they really face. They're faced with this. There is a big dilemma. These sciences were developed by people of high caliber in terms of knowledge and understanding. And people of such a high level of spirituality and maturity and experience in life. So when random people like us teach their stuff, you can feel the gap. You can feel the gap. You can feel these guys come from a deep place within. They come from a lot of maturity, a lot of understanding, a lot of connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You realize how small you are when you read their So something is beeping, yeah? I can hear something beeping. Is it the table? Right.
Sounds like a water stream.
Okay. So at age, so when looking at Imam Ahmad, that he had to wait, or he himself decided to wait until age 40. It seems he himself wanted to mature as a human being, as a Muslim, as a talib al-ilm, as a student of knowledge. So he wanted to reach a high level of maturity, so when he teaches, he is full of what he teaches. So he is personally at a level that matches what he teaches. Because really, honestly, sometimes, as I said, this is something people who teach Islamic studies struggle with sometimes. You feel, I shouldn't be teaching this. Why? Because I'm not a person who could really represent this. I'm not a person who really has internalized this and who is able to teach it from their heart. And that's a big dilemma. Because when you are, as I said, you know, when the scholars documented their science and their knowledge and their contributions, that's not just information. That's a whole way of life. There is a person behind this. There is maturity. There is knowledge and wisdom behind this. So when they documented this, when you come across it, it's not mere information. It is such a profound heritage that you have. So if you are just going to pick up the information and share it, and even speaking their words, and you yourself personally have not reached that level of maturity and knowledge, it's really a dilemma. So you're faced with two options. Either you have to grow as a person to be able to teach these things, so you have to grow in your connection to Allah, your taqwa, your spirituality. You have to grow in your knowledge, you have to grow in your maturity and the level of your wisdom, and as a person. And you also have to grow in your ibadah and in your depth. And that takes so many years. That takes a lot of work. And who reaches that level today? Or you can just fake it. Fake it, speak these big words that are far bigger than who you are. You're a dwarf compared to these giants. And you're speaking big words that are far bigger than who you are. And that's powerful. And that's why Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah, he says, إِنَّ لِلْعِلْمِ طُغْيَانًا كَطُغْيَانِ الْمَالِ. He says, knowledge gives people a sense of pride and arrogance about themselves. They become full of themselves, just like money does to the rich people. When a person gets rich, it's easy for them to get, pompous and sort of full of pride, right? Knowledge also has this hazard. That's why the early scholars used to teach adab before ilm. Like one of the tabi'een said, تَعَلَّمْنَا الْأَدَبْ ثُمَّ تَعَلَّمْنَا الْعِلْمِ. We learned adab and akhlaq and humbleness, then we were taught knowledge afterwards. This is why Imam Ahmad, we said that when he taught, there was about 5,000 people attending his halaqah. 5,000 people. 500 would be serious students of knowledge who would learn. The rest of them, 4,500, would be people who just want to look at Imam Ahmad and see how he speaks, how he carries himself, to learn from his akhlaq. About Imam Malik, one of his students, they said, we stayed with Imam Malik for so long until we took his knowledge, but then we stayed with him for so many years afterwards to learn his adab, to learn his demeanor, his character. So Imam Ahmad started teaching when he was when he reached age 40. There's something interesting that Imam Ahmad was very close to Yahya ibn Ma'in. Yahya ibn Ma'in, one of the great scholars of Ilm al-Rijal. Ilm al-Rijal is documentation of men, of people, the narrators of hadith. What is their state? Are they reliable in terms of taqwa, religiosity and honesty? And what about their memory, the level of their memory? So Ilm al-Rijal, Imam Yahya ibn Ma'in was the top man in that science at his time. So he was very close friend with Imam Ahmad, and we said they traveled together to Mecca on their way to Yemen to meet Abdul Razzaq al-San'ani. But they found him in Mecca. So Yahya ibn Ma'in, one day he was with Imam Ahmad, and they found a huge congregation in the masjid. So there were so many people gathering, attending a halaqah. So they saw there must be a big scholar there, that all this number are attending. So let's go and learn. And they were big scholars at the time, by the way. They were probably Imam Ahmad probably was in his 60s, in the later part of his life. So they walk into the masjid, And Imam Ahmed, by that time, he had earned prominence among the students of knowledge and in the whole Muslim world. So they walk into and they see one of al-Qussas. Al-Qussas is a term of people who used to come up with narrations that would amuse people and entertain them. Strange stories. But a lot of them were fake and were untrue and were fabricated narrations. But they are very strange, they are very entertaining, and people would gather to hear these stories. This is why they appeared even at the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Ali ibn Abi Talib, he actually warned against al-Qussas, these people. He said, be careful, beware of them, don't sit where they teach. Because these people have not studied knowledge, they just found some books or they collected some folk tales, narrations, and they put them together and they start teaching them. And because they are amusing, they're very good storytellers, people get amused, they get a lot of entertainment, so they love watching these guys and coming and attending them. So when Imam Ahmed and Yahya ibn Ma'in, they walked into this masjid, they saw this huge gathering, they said, let's listen to this guy. So the guy says, and he seems to be like, not a normal liar, but a high caliber liar. So he says basically, حدثني أحمد بن حنبل عن يحيى بن معين. Okay, Ahmed ibn Hanbal taught me, or he gave me this narration, which he took from Yahya ibn Ma'in, which he took from so and so, from the Prophet ﷺ, that anyone who says La ilaha illallah, Allah will create a bird, and this bird has 100 tongues. Each tongue would be saying La ilaha illallah till the day of judgment. And each reward for each tongue saying La ilaha illallah all this time will be recorded for this man. So Yahya ibn Ma'in looks at Ahmed ibn Hanbal, he says, did you narrate something from me like this? He said, no. He said, where is this guy getting this thing from? So Ahmed ibn Hanbal says, I have a question. He says, yes. He says, okay, can we know the chain of narration? Where does this come from? He says, yes. حدثني أحمد بن حنبل and Yahya ibn Ma'in. Ahmed ibn Hanbal taught me, which he took from Yahya ibn Ma'in, so on, so on, so on, till the Prophet ﷺ. So like the narration, the chain of narration, the man is sure about it. He didn't even change it, like it's the same thing. So Ahmed ibn Hanbal looks at him and he says, I am Ahmed ibn Hanbal, and this is Yahya ibn Ma'in, and this is not something we have narrated. But the guy, as he said, high caliber liar, yeah? So he was stuck. So he says, you think you are the only Ahmed ibn Hanbal, Yahya ibn Ma'in? There are so many others. So anyway, so that's an incident that happened with Ahmed ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah ta'ala. So this is why, it's a warning, some people, these are al-Qussas, they teach things that are not verifiable. They're not authentic narrations, they're not authentic stories, they're just, as I said, for entertainment, amusement. There's something new, catchy, trendy, so people would go and attend their halaqahs and there would be no knowledge in there. Knowledge. This is why you have a lot of narrations from the early generations in the Salaf warning against ahadith al-Qussas. Against ahadith al-Qussas. Even one of the great scholars of hadith, Ibn al-Qattan, he wrote a book about these al-Qussas, about their lies and warning against them. So, something about Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal that was very interesting as well. We said, Imam, can we leave the questions till the end? That would be better. Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, as we said, he made it his point to study hadith first. So when he documented a huge number of hadith, he made sure that he learned them very well, he classified them, and he acted upon them. One day he says, ما سمعت بحديث من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أو ما رويت حديثا عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا عملت به حتى أنني رويت حديثا أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم احتجم فأعطى الحجام درهما فذهبت إلى الحجام فاحتجمت وأعطيته درهما. He said, there's no hadith that I narrated from the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم except that I acted upon it. I put it in action. But there was one hadith that I narrated that the Prophet ﷺ went to do hijama, cupping, and he gave the person who's done the cupping for him, he gave him a dirham. So he said, so I went to the hijam, the person who does hijama, and I got him to make hijama for me and I gave him a dirham. To follow this hadith. This is how careful and meticulous he was about his hadith and his knowledge. So Imam Ahmad developed a very good level of understanding of hadith, and because that comes with implementation as well. We said he dedicated his life solely for that, and we said he inherited some property from his dad, so he didn't need to worry so much about living. And you remember we mentioned Imam Abu Hanifa, he was a rich person, and he lived a fairly, life of fairly luxurious life. Same with Imam Malik. Imam Shafi'i was more of a poor person. Remember we said, and he said that I got so much used to poverty that I don't have any aspirations to become rich. Imam Ahmed Ibn Hanbal, he used to live at a very, very basic level, to the point his children would complain. His children would complain, let's just live like anyone else. But Imam Ahmed, as I said, was a person who was detached completely from dunya. And that was his style. That was good for him. But that's not necessarily good for everyone. So you need to read yourself, you need to test yourself before you choose. Sometimes people put themselves in hardship, they read something from the early generations, from a tabi'een, and they want to follow the example of this person. Maybe that's not for you. Maybe that's too difficult for you. So you need to be wise as well, because you're going to find among the companions some who chose poverty. They chose to live at a very basic level. But you have other companions who chose to live a very rich life. Like Anas ibn Malik, Khadimu Rasulullah, who used to serve the Prophet ﷺ. He was from the Mu'ammirin, he lived such a long time. And I think he died past age 100. He had a palace in Medina, in Al-Awali. He had a palace. He lived in a palace. Is this anything against Iman? No. Whereas some other companions lived a very basic level. That's what they chose for themselves. So you need to also understand yourself, what's actually good for you. Because you might push yourself into poverty or into a very basic level of living, and maybe that's going to be a fitna for you. And it backfires, and you don't want to go even to righteousness and to worship again. Who knows? Maybe a life of affluence would distract you away completely from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you need to study yourself and figure out yourself what is actually good for you. So you put your relationship with Allah first and foremost, and see what is conducive, what is helpful to enhancing that state. So you have to be careful about these things. Don't see, like Imam Nawawi, he didn't sleep. He would be just reading and he would just be nodding off and having minutes of sleep. I'm going to do the same, right? And I actually tried doing this, and I ended up with a very bad health condition. So now when I went to the doctor, who was my dad, and he says, "You're mad, you're crazy, what are you doing to yourself? You can't live as a human being like this." So I figured out, maybe for some people it works out, but not for me. So I really put my health in jeopardy. So that means not everything you hear, you go and do it. You need to be careful. The example for us is the example of the Prophet ﷺ. That's the main example. Then other, nuances, you have to be careful as to how you adopt them. Let's look at the physical description of Imam Ahmed Ibn Hanbal. He was mildly tall. So he wasn't very tall. He was a little bit above average. And he was dark skinned. He was dark skinned because originally the Arabs they have al-adama. Al-adama among the Arabs, which comes as well from Adam's name comes from that. Adam's name, alayhi salam. Al-adama is the dark skin that you find among the Arabs. You've seen Arabs who have dark skin. That's al-adama. That's al-adama. You still find a lot of these people in the Arabian Peninsula, especially in the southern parts of Saudi Arabia, even the northern parts. In Yemen, in Oman, you find this kind of Arab dark skin. That's the origin of the Arabs. That's how the Arabs actually are. But the Arabs have some fair skin still. Like Aisha radiallahu anha is a pure Arab. But she had fair skin to the extent that her face had a reddish kind of complexion. The Prophet himself, his face was more of a fair skin. Imam Malik himself, he was an Arab, but he was almost so fair, almost white. And his eyes were colored. So there are some Okay, some among the Arab who have this fair skin, but mainly the Arabs, they have this al-adama, which is the dark skin, dark skin. So Imam Ahmad was actually dark skin. He was dark skin, and he was very thin. He was very thin. When he became, like, when he had gray hair, he would dye his hair with henna. So he had this reddish color of henna, this orangey color of henna. This is how his beard was. Still in his beard there was some black hair. Imam Ahmad would dress up in white most of the time. He would dress up in white, and he was, like some of the people who knew Imam Ahmad, they said, I've never seen a person whose clothes were as clean as Imam Ahmad's. He was so careful about the cleanliness of his clothes. So careful about the cleanliness of his clothes. And he used to wear sometimes al-qalansuwa, which is the cap, the kufi cap, yeah? That most of us have, like this brother here. This kind of cap, okay? He would wear this, or sometimes he would wrap around it imama. He would wrap a piece of cloth around it to make it more of a imama. And Imam Ahmad's cap, he made it with his own hands. He made it himself. He made it himself. Sometimes he would dress up in green. Sometimes he would dress up in green. In cold weather, he would wear this farwa, which is more of a cloak made with sheepskin. With sheepskin. That's what he would wear. What would Imam Ahmad eat? We said previously that often he would eat dry bread. So he would put it in water, soak it in water, and then eat it. Dry bread, that's it. That's what he would eat. And he would not really eat so much. So in terms of food, I don't think Imam Ahmad's food was really healthy, but for him it worked out. Imam Ahmad died around age 72, 73. That's the age that he died. So Imam Ahmad, in terms of his food, he wouldn't eat much, as I said. Sometimes he would add to this bread a little bit of salt. And he never ate fruits. He never ate fruits. But he would sometimes eat watermelon. Sometimes he would eat watermelon. But the other fruits, like that was common in Iraq, for example, pomegranate, safarjal. ايش safarjal? Safarjal. Really? Anyone knows, Arab knows safarjal in English? What safarjal is? It's a very, I think it's ugly kind of, it's a yellowish, looks more like pear, but it's very hard and shape is not so regular. And when you eat it, it sort of bites your tongue. Yeah, it's hard, it's not easy. Okay. So that was as well, he wouldn't eat these fruits. So he would usually, if he ate fruits, it would be only watermelon or grapes sometimes. And he would eat the grapes with watermelon or dates. That's it. Sometimes he would eat lentils. And he would also, an integral part of his diet was vinegar. That's it. That's what Imam Ahmad would eat. What?
Quince. In English. Quince.
Quince?
Q-U-I-N-C.
Quince? Quincy. It's not a common fruit, but I mean, in the Sham and in Iraq, it's actually very common. It's very common, and I think it's very nutritious. I believe it's very nutritious. Okay, there's a person called Ishaq ibn Ibrahim, who was a governor at the time. He wanted to check what Imam Ahmad has for breakfast. Or actually, Imam Ahmad had a habit, we said, of fasting a lot. So he usually break his fast at Maghrib, and that's the meal that he would have. So when he checked his breakfast, or what he would eat for breaking his fast, it was basically 2 small loaves of bread with a small cucumber. That's what he would eat. 2 small loaves of bread with a small cucumber. And that's it. For him, it was enough. But we said his house was very small. There's almost nothing in it. And yes, it was very simple. Well, it was a very simple house. Very simple house. He married 2 women. First one was Aisha bint al-Fadl. Second one was Rayhana. So these are his 2 wives. Imam Ahmed, he never had an argument with any of his wives. That's something that he stands out in. No argument, no fight, no quarrel with any of his wives. Okay, one day we said that Imam Ahmed was inspired so much by Imam Shafi'i, and he loved him so much, he got attached to him. So every time Imam Shafi'i visited Baghdad, he would stay with Imam Ahmed, and Imam Ahmed would stay with him most of the time, to the extent that he won't even pray the Sunnah prayers. Why? Because he didn't have time. He just wanted to stay with Imam Shafi'i and learn from him. The children of Imam Ahmed, they just wanted to see who Al-Shafi'i actually was. Why? Because Ahmed ibn Hanbal would mention Imam Al-Shafi'i and make dua for him every day. Every day, Imam Al-Shafi'i, Imam Al-Shafi'i, Imam Al-Shafi'i, Imam Al-Shafi'i. So he would talk about him so much that the children of Imam Ahmed just wanted to see who Al-Shafi'i was. So one day Imam Shafi'i comes to Baghdad, and he decides to spend that night in Imam Ahmed's house. So he goes to his house. They eat together, and Imam Shafi'i eats a lot that night. Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal had a daughter, was a very knowledgeable, very righteous woman. So because she heard so much about Imam Shafi'i, she said, he's a person I should observe and learn from. So she would actually look at Imam Ahmed at Imam Shafi'i from a distance. He was sitting in al-majlis, in the guest room. So she would observe him and watch him. She wants to see what's special about this man. First thing, he eats a lot. That's the first observation. Second observation, Imam Ahmed goes to sleep. So he leaves, he puts some water with Imam Shafi'i for him if he needs to drink, or if he needs to, that was the norm there, to do Qiyam al-Layl. Qiyam al-Layl was the norm. Just like you would pray Isha, actually even, there are so many people don't pray even. But for them, Qiyam al-Layl, like, you don't pray at night? That's just this weird. It's strange that someone doesn't pray at night. So he put the water there for him if you want to, once he decides to pray at night. Because they used to sleep, then wake up later on in the night and pray. So she's observing him, and she wants to see when he's going to wake up, he's going to pray, how is his recitation, how long he's going to recite, how long is his ruku'. She wants to see all of this. But Imam Shafi'i lays on his back, and she sees him sleeping. And that's it. She waits 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. Whole night is gone. The man hasn't prayed any rak'ah. Then adhan for Fajr is called. And she says, like, why does my dad speak so much about this guy? But then, not only this, he stands up and he prays. She says he even prays without wudu. This guy just woke up from sleep, he's praying to sunnah, and he's like he's not even making wudu, or he's praying for his witr, but he prays without wudu. She says, that's really like, there's something wrong, something off here. So later on she asks her dad, and she says, this man, you keep praising. These are the 3 things I saw from him. He ate too much. That's not the right way. Number 2, he didn't pray even at night. He slept the whole night. Then he wakes up for Fajr and he prays without wudu. Imam Ahmed is puzzled. So he goes to Imam Shafi'i and he says, when my daughter observed you and that's what she saw. He says, well, she's right. Because هذا طعام طيب من رجل طيب فأحببت أن أكثر منه. He says, this is a good food from a good man that I love. So I know it comes from halal. So he says, so I ate from it to honor you, because you're having me as a guest. So I wanted to honor you, so I ate from it. I enjoyed it because it's your food. As for me sleeping the whole night, he said I didn't sleep. I just laid on my back, and as I was trying to sleep, the hadith came to my head where the Prophet ﷺ, the brother of Anas ibn Malik, the younger brother, he had a little bird that he played with. And the bird died. So he got upset. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he saw him, he said to the child, Ya Aba Umayr. He gave him a kunya. He said, Ya Aba Umayr, ma fa'ala al-nughayr. Aba Umayr, what did the bird do? So the boy says, it died. So the Prophet ﷺ says, Ya Aba Umayr, ma fa'ala al-nughayr. What did the bird do? It died. So the Prophet ﷺ would repeat that for him, some sort of play. Then the Prophet ﷺ would make him laugh. So he said, the hadith came to my mind, and I found it very interesting. So he said, so I extracted from this hadith 70 practical points. 70 فائدة. So I found in this hadith 70 points, practical points that we can actually learn from them and practice. And when I finished, the adhan for Fajr was called at that time. So I stood up, prayed. Subhanallah. So that was an incident that happened as well with him. Yeah, he didn't break wudu because he didn't sleep. So obviously he didn't need to make wudu. Something about Imam Ahmed. So let's go to the Musnad of Imam Ahmed. Imam Ahmed started studying like hadith carefully and collecting hadith from age 16. So you can imagine such a long time studying hadith. So he kept developing his Musnad. And Musnad means it's a collection of hadith that is classified according to the narrators. So, for example, Sahih al-Bukhari, you have, for example, Babul Niyya, or Kitabul Iman, Kitabul Fitan, based on the topic, thematic topics. This is how the hadith are arranged. But Musnad, anytime you hear a Musnad is classified according to the companion who narrates the hadith. So in Musnad Imam Ahmad, you're going to find, for example, Musnadu Abi Huraira. All the hadith narrated by Abu Huraira in one place. Musnadu Abdullah ibn Umar. All the hadith reported from Abdullah ibn Umar in one place. Musnadu Aisha radiyallahu anha. All the hadith from Aisha in one place. That's what Musnad is. So this is how Imam Ahmad put his Musnad together. And his Musnad is so big that the unique narrations in the Musnad, because there's a lot of repetition. Remember, a hadith, sometimes the same hadith comes with slightly different wording or from a different route, chain of narration. But the unique narrations that are in Musnad Imam Ahmad are around 28,000. Around 28,000 unique narrations. The others are around 48. So all of them together are around 48,000 narrations, hadith. It's one of the biggest collections of hadith that we have in the history of Islam. Imam Ahmed Ibn Hanbal built his own madhab. He didn't say I have a madhab, but his fiqh and his approach was documented by his students and was followed. Imam Ahmed hated, or he disliked, that people actually write his fatwa. He objected to that. He won't let them. But still, they actually wrote his fatwa, and mainly it was his son Salih. He narrated a lot of it, and his fatwa were collected by Al-Khallal. He collected Masail al-Imam Ahmad. Masail Imam Ahmad, all the opinions of Imam Ahmad, he collected them. We said so there's something special about Imam Ahmad is determination, a strong level of determination. If he wanted to do something, he's going to put his mind on it, he's not going to leave it until he gets it done. That's how Imam Ahmad was. So, and he was very studious, very hardworking. And remember the incident where they met Abdul Razak al-San'ani in Mecca, because they were traveling to Yemen. They found him in Mecca. He said, no, I decided to go to Yemen, so we're going to go to Yemen. Why? Because Abdul Razak al-San'ani is not going to stay for long in Mecca. So he wanted to learn everything from Abdul Razzaq As-San'ani, so he knows he has to go with him to Yemen and spend enough time with him to learn everything from Abdul Razzaq As-San'ani. So during his stay in Yemen, he ran out of finances, and we mentioned that. He ran out of finances. So people tried to give him money, he won't take it. Even Abdul Razzaq, his teacher, his sheikh, he said, run out of money, take this as a loan, you can pay it back. He said, no. What did he do? His shoes, he borrowed money. He borrowed money from someone and he kept his shoes as a trust with that person. So because the person doesn't know him, he's a stranger. So he said, I'm going to give you back your money and these are my shoes. So you can keep them with you. So you can imagine, he walked around without shoes. Why? Because he did not want to seek help from anyone. And then he started working as someone who carries stuff for people. That's Imam Ahmed. Then he worked also cleaning people's houses. People hired him to clean and to do labor work, and he would do it. And he would not take sadaqah or charity or gift from no one. And that later on reflected because a lot of the khulafa wanted to give him something, some compensation because of the ill treatment that he received previously, and he refused that. Even one of his children, I think it was Salih, he accepted atiyah or a gift from one of the khulafa. Imam Ahmed said, you go and find yourself another house, you don't live with me. And there was an issue with them. And Imam Ahmed would not go and visit him in his house, he would not eat in his house. But he would be okay with him coming to his house. But he said, I'm not going to go to your house, I'm not going to eat in your house. So he was very careful about this. Something interesting as well Imam Ahmed did, and this is something Al-Dhahabi mentioned. He mentioned this narration from someone who lived after, like around the time of Imam Ahmed, or afterwards, a little bit afterwards. So he had some of the students of Imam Ahmed visiting him, and he brought out a book, and they used to write books, transcribe them. So he said, can you recognize, you guys, this book? He opened it. Can you recognize the handwriting? He said, this is the handwriting of our Shaykh, Imam Ahmed. He had passed away at that time. That's our teacher, Imam Ahmed Ibn Hanbal. How did you get this book? He said, we were in Mecca and we were studying with Sufyan ibn Uyayna. We were staying with him and studying with him, Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Then we missed Ahmed. For a few days, Ahmed didn't show up. We didn't see him. So we decided to go to the room where he usually stays, and we knocked on the door and we said, what's wrong? He was inside. He said, my clothes, my only thobe that I have was stolen. So I have nothing to wear, so I can't leave the house. I'm stuck in the house for a few days. I can't leave the house. I don't have clothes. Subhanallah. See how such a simple thing, we don't even think about this issues like this, but for these people it was difficult. Umar bin Abdul Aziz, he had two thobes, and sometimes they would get dirty. He would stay at home and wait until his wife washes them and they dry up so he could wear one of them. It was a struggle. Clothes were a struggle at that time. So this friend, he said to Imam Ahmed, he said, okay, like I have some money, I can give it to you. If you want to take it as a gift, take it. But if you insist to take it as a loan, I'm still okay. He said no. So I said, I tried to figure out, find out something to help him. This guy, he won't accept it. So he said, okay, listen, there's a book that I borrowed from someone and I want to transcribe it. I want to make a copy for myself. Would you transcribe it for me and I would pay you for that? He said, yes, fine. So give me the book. So he gave him the book and he transcribed it, and he gave him, so he brought him the book and he gave it to him, and the man said, that's the money, up front. That's the money up front, take it. It is a dinar. Imam Ahmed said, keep it, go to the market and buy me some clothing. So the guy goes and he gets the clothing and he gets Imam Ahmed the sheets of paper. So Imam Ahmed then transcribes the whole book for him and he gives it to him. So you can imagine this, he was a man who would not take money from anyone. So that was, okay, Imam Ahmed. His madhab, he was very careful to follow the Quran and the Sunnah. Very careful. And so he would straight away take his fiqh from the Quran or the Sunnah. If he didn't find anything clear or anything specific in the Quran or the Sunnah, he would go to the fatwa of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would seek their fatwa. If they have agreed on something, he would take it without question. If they have differed about the same thing, he would choose from their fatwa the one that he feels is closer to the Quran and the Sunnah. And sometimes he would change his opinion. This is why you find Imam Ahmed has sometimes qawlan aw thalatha. Sometimes he would have 2 or 3 opinions about the same thing. Well, any student of knowledge, any scholar, as they grow and mature in knowledge, they're going to change some of their opinions. That's normal. That's obvious. It's almost with every scholar. And that's a sign of maturity and that the person is actually studying and learning. Something that we could close with about Imam Ahmed, we said that, you remember about the fitna of Khalq al-Quran, the fitna of Khalq al-Quran, where some of the Khulafa al-Abbasiyin, Abbasid caliphs, they adopted, specifically Al-Ma'mun, started with Al-Ma'mun, and then it was with Al-Mu'tasim, then Al-Wathiq, these 3 Khulafa, they adopted the opinion of the Mu'tazila that the Quran was a creation, and they tested the scholars. And said Imam Ahmed refused to give in. And there was one incident when Imam Ahmed, the other scholars told him about, they told, وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَ, don't kill yourself. And they narrated the verse as well to him, إِلَّا مَنْ أُكْرِهَ وَقَلْبُهُ مُطْمَئِنٌ بِالْإِيمَانِ. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah will not accept or will not forgive someone who says disbelief after they have believed, except if they are forced into it. If it's a matter of life and death, their life is on the line, they can just say what is haram or what is kufr in order to get themselves out, just like Ammar bin Yasir. Ammar bin Yasir radiyallahu anhu. So these scholars, they said to Imam Ahmed, why do you push yourself? You'll get killed. So Imam Ahmed thought about this. So when he was brought out of prison, and he was going to be questioned, and there were so many people, students of knowledge, who were ready. They had their sheets ready and their pens ready, and they were waiting just for one statement from Imam Ahmed. And we said almost all the scholars gave in except for 4. It was Imam Ahmed and Muhammad ibn Nuh and Al-Qawariri and Ibn Hammad. 4. The last 2, they gave in ultimately. Muhammad ibn Nuh died because of the suffering, and Imam Ahmed remained. So when he looked at all of these people, and he was in pain because he had been whipped, and his back was, like the skin has come off, his back was numb, he couldn't feel anything, he was extremely exhausted, and we said he did not even stop fasting and praying at night even when he was in prison throughout the predicament. I think he was in prison for about 28 months. 28 months. So he was brought, when he saw all of these huge number of people, he was about to give in. Just why? Just to save his life. When he saw all of these people, he said, أَمُوتُ وَلَا أُضِلُّ هَؤُلَاءَ. And he says, I'd rather die than send these people astray. I'd rather die. And he refused to say it. So he was whipped even more, but then he was put in, as we said, what do you call it, home prison or house arrest. He was put under house arrest, and during this time, one of the great scholars came from Al-Andalus, Baqi ibn Mikhlad. This is one of the great scholars of hadith, Baqi ibn Mikhlad. He wrote a musnad, a collection of hadith. That's the biggest collection of hadith in the history of Al-Islam. This is the biggest collection of hadith in the history of Al-Islam. Musnadu Baqi ibn Mikhlad. And unfortunately, it's lost. They found some parchments of it, but not many. But it's such a huge book. And some of the contemporary scholars think the manuscripts are there somewhere in Germany. So I know one of the scholars of our time has been chasing the history of, because, by the way, you know, sometimes people know horses and their lineage and so on and so forth. The manuscript scholars as well have ways to trace a manuscript, where it traveled, who it was bought from, and so on and so forth. People have this for dogs now, yeah? They tell you where it was, which kind of
Genealogy.
genealogy this comes from. Some scholars of manuscripts have this kind of genealogy for manuscripts. So I know a contemporary scholar who's an expert, one of the top experts in the world today, and he's been chasing this Musnad Baqi ibn Mikhlad, and he says, I have a very strong clues that it is somewhere in Germany.
And it's important.
Yes, and he even has some names. These are people who bought these manuscripts from ignorant Arabs who inherited these from their forefathers, and they had them as just as historical value. They didn't know the real value of them. And they sold them for certain amounts of money, and they didn't know what it was. So some German Orientalist had bought them. And he has some of the names, and he's been chasing, but it's very difficult to chase there because this is even an issue of national security in Germany. So when he investigated about this, he got in some trouble. So you still have, there are some people who are searching for him. So Baqi ibn Mikhlad, he came from Andalus because he heard about Imam Ahmed. He wanted to learn from Imam Ahmed. So he came. When he asked about Imam Ahmed, he was told about the story. Imam Ahmed was not supposed to meet anyone. He said, how am I going to? I came from an Andalus. It's like about 3 months journey on my feet. I came to learn, and now I can't learn from Imam Ahmed. He said, I must figure out a way. So he goes to the house of Imam Ahmed, knocks on the door, and he says, Sa'il. And he says, like I'm a beggar, help me out, give me some money. So Imam Ahmed opens, then when he sees Imam Ahmed, he says, I'm looking for Imam Ahmed. He says, Ana Ahmed, but I can't teach you. I'm not supposed to teach anyone. I'm not supposed to speak to no one. He says, but Imam Ahmed, I came to you from Al-Andalus. What should I do? So Imam Ahmed said, listen, I have an idea. You come to me every day as a beggar. You ask for food, you ask for money, and you sit by the door. I'll be behind the door, I'll be narrating some hadith to you. And these people would record straight away to their memory. So I would be narrating maybe 2-3 hadith to you every day, and then I'll give you something to eat, and then you walk away. So no one gets suspicious about that. He said, fine, fair deal. So he comes every day to Imam Ahmed and does the same, until he collected from Imam Ahmed 300 hadith in that way. 300 hadith in that way. So roughly he was there for about 3 months or 100 days. Then Imam Ahmed was released. Why? Because Al-Mutawakkil, Al-Imam Khalifa Al-Mutawakkil, he took over. Al-Wathiq passed away, and Al-Mutawakkil became the Khalifa. Al-Mutawakkil was upon the madhab of Ahl Sunnah. So he ended this plight of testing people upon or about Khalq al-Quran, and he gave Imam Ahmed full freedom, and he wanted to compensate Imam Ahmed for all the suffering and everything, but Imam Ahmed refused. So Imam Ahmed at that time, he gained so much prominence. So Imam Ahmed went back to the masjid, started teaching. Every time Baqi ibn Mikhlad comes to the masjid, Imam Ahmed says, make space for him, that's the real student of knowledge. That's the real student of knowledge, and he would let him come closest to him. So that's with Baqi ibn Mikhlad. Imam Ahmed, when he was taken first, by the way, he was with a group of scholars, and there was some people who came from, some Bedouins came around. It was a huge gathering. So Imam Ahmed said, somebody said to him, if you are not going to give in when it comes to the issue of Khalq al-Quran, you will be tested. He said, Wallahi, I don't fear imprisonment, because the prison is not going to be worse than my house. It's not going to be worse than my house. Like my house, there's nothing there. So this prison is going to be just like my house. If they kill me, that will be shahada. I will be a martyr. But what I fear is that being whipped. That's the only thing that I don't think I can handle this. So one of the Bedouins says, you know, Imam Ahmed, or someone else in the gathering who had been whipped. He said, you know, it's the first one, second lash, then after that you become numb, you don't feel it. And I said, okay, that's fine. One of the Bedouins, and then Imam Ahmed later on in his later life, he says, Wallahi, one of the words that struck me the most was a Bedouin in that gathering. He said, Ya Imam Ahmed, if you are whipped, you will be whipped for the sake of Allah. So, you don't give in, because people depend on you here to say the truth. So, if you are whipped, you are whipped with dignity, and if you die with dignity, and you don't give in. So Imam Ahmed said, Wallahi, these words touched my heart, and Allah helped me through them. So I remained steadfast. So he was whipped a lot. Imam Ahmed was whipped a lot. Even one of the guys who were actually lashing him, he said, Wallahi, if we lashed an elephant like we lashed Imam Ahmed, it would have collapsed. But this guy, every time we lash him, he says, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah. And he was fasting. So Subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him steadfast in this. So Allah protected the aqidah and of Ahl Sunnah, the true belief of Ahl Sunnah through Imam Ahmed. When he was taken to prison, when he was taken to be lashed the first time, he was really troubled because it seemed that he had an issue with being lashed. He was taken, and another guy came from the chamber where they lash people. And he was a thief. So he looks at Imam Ahmed and he sees his face is pale and he's worried. He says, Ya Imam, what are you worried about? He said, I'm going to be lashed and I'm afraid I won't be able to, to stand that. He says, Ya Imam, I've been lashed hundreds of times for the sake of shaitan. So he was a thief, a drunker, junkie kind of guy. I was lashed for shaitan so many times and I haven't given up. You are being lashed for Allah. So Imam Ahmed said, Wallahi, Allah gave me so much patience when I heard this and it made me firm. He said it was exactly, the first time you get lashed, second time, then you don't feel it, you're numb. Subhanallah. So Imam Ahmed, the signs of torture were still showing on his body even when he died. Even when he passed away. So that means that he was tortured severely, but he remained steadfast. So these are, I think it's a beautiful, Imam Ahmed, there's something about him as well. If he saw something wrong, he would not remain silent. He would speak, but with adab, and with good akhlaq and with wisdom. Like for example, at that time of his time, some kind of spread of Shi'ism was happening. So he wrote Kitabu Fada'il al-Sahaba. He wrote about the merits of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. And the book spread. Also the people in Iraq, they utilized the fatwa from Imam Abu Hanifa about Nabidh al-Kufa. Nabidh, they used to make it a drink, some sort of a drink they would make from different things, from grapes, from dates, etc. But they would make it in a way that's slightly different than normal alcoholic drinks would be made. So people deemed it at the time, it was intoxicating to a certain degree. But people deemed it more like juice. So they would drink it. They would drink it. So Imam Ahmed Ibn Hanbal wrote Kitabul Ashriba. And he would have it always in his pocket. Every time, wherever he sat, he would pick it up and he would read the hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, Kullu muskirin khamr. Every intoxicant matter is considered to be khamr and it's haram. Wa kullu muskirin haram. So he would read all of these hadith. So every time he saw something, he would actually write about it, he would advise about it. So he was very careful about correcting people's beliefs and people's understanding about Islam. So this is a giant, one of the giant scholars, and these four Imams are really amazing and great, and there's so much that we can learn from them, subhanallah. And I personally, the more I read into their lives, really I benefit a lot. There is so many wisdoms, so many blessings that you can learn from these people. May Allah bless them and accept their efforts, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant this ummah more scholars and people of knowledge who would revive the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and the true message of Islam and help people live by it. Jazakumullah khair. Well, if there is questions, let me take them quickly. I'll take one or two quickly because we have for Isha. I'll give the brother because he asked at the beginning. Yes.
Remember when you earlier mentioned how there's different, can you hear me, brother?
Yeah.
How there's different companions that took different routes, where each one has their own style. Where does that come from? Like, how is the style decided?
Companions were different. They were all upon the way of the Prophet ﷺ, but there are personal preferences and there are personal tendencies. So humans by nature are different. So you have different interests than me. Someone else has different interests. You have a certain level of stamina in certain areas, where I have better stamina in different areas as well. So your physical nature, your genetic makeup stipulates this, but also your awareness of yourself. Your awareness of yourself. So some people, poverty is good for them. Because if they get rich, really rich, they'll become arrogant. And they will go into they'll do all the bad things. But for some people, if they get poor, that's a great trial for them. They're going to be angry with Allah, they will be upset, and they won't even worship Allah. So people are different in their demeanor, in their tendencies, in their gifts, in their skills. So all of these actually require a real expression. A real expression. So it's just like this. A person is aware of themselves. They're going to find this, if you have an orientation to something, you'll find yourself flowing into that. As long as it doesn't go against Islam and Sharia, you're okay with this. So this is where it comes from. Personal differences, they are there by our very creation. Yes?
Any insight into why Imam Ahmed hesitated for people to record his fatwa? Why other scholars throughout the past?
He mentioned this. He mentioned why he didn't want people to record his fatwa. Because he said I'm a human being. I can slip, I can make mistakes. So he wanted only people to take the Quran and the Sunnah and develop the understanding around them. So anchor the understanding around the Hadith and around the Quran. And that's the right way. But some people cannot reach that level, so they always want a vehicle to help them get there, which is explanations of the scholars, clarifications. That's why people need the books of tafsir. Yeah, he didn't want that because he didn't hold himself in high esteem. He didn't hold himself. Every time someone praised him, he would say, وَمَا أَدْرِي لَعَلَّهُ اسْتِدْرَاجٌ. He said, how would I know? Maybe this is some kind of something that makes me feel good about myself, then I would not do enough for the sake of Allah. How do I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is really pleased with me and I've done enough for Him? Okay. So we're out of time. I apologize for taking more questions. Jazakumullah khair. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ala nabina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. We meet next week inshallah.